This is an article that I haven't talked about yet, but it's very important that I do. John Bolton admits to planning foreign coup. This is a very important story, and this happened in July of 2022, where this former senior government official, he was under the Bush administration, George W. Bush, U.S. National Secretary Advisor. He admitted, this was in July of 2022, he admitted that the United States carried out government coups in foreign nations. So the article is entitled, John Bolton Admits to Planning Foreign Coups. The former senior White House official said overthrowing governments, quote, takes a lot of work. This is how evil America's foreign policy is. It takes a lot of work is what he said. This is in quotations. This is how evil this piece of garbage and America's foreign policy is. Former U.S. National Secretary Advisor John Bolton took credit for attempting to oust foreign leaders, claiming he played a role in regime change. Hold on a minute. In regime change efforts abroad, while suggesting ex-President Donald Trump lacked the foresight to carry out his own push at home. So he's blaming Donald Trump. There are a million things to fault Donald Trump for. Carrying out military coups or foreign coups on foreign nations is not one of them. This piece of garbage needs to be imprisoned. And pieces of garbage like him need to be imprisoned. They don't deserve the air we breathe. Speaking to CNN's Jake Tapper following Tuesday's congressional hearing into the January 6th Capitol riot, Bolton insisted the former commander-in-chief could not have pulled off a, quote, carefully planned coup d'etat, as that's not the way Donald Trump does things. When the TV host, Jake Tapper, argued that one doesn't have to be brilliant to attempt a coup, Bolton held his ground, saying he had personally taken part in the ouster of foreign governments and that such projects require significant planning. You see how evil these people are and the way they talk about it as if it's just like planning your freaking day? As if it's nothing. And we see these foreign nations and the internal problems that they have. These internal problems are started and are a direct result of U.S. meddling and U.S. coup d'etats, U.S. actions. So they're not internal problems, they're actually external by the U.S. And they're carried out by the U.S. and the U.S. is responsible for them. And in some cases you have other Western states that are responsible and the result of these coups d'etats, France, Britain, and so on. Quote, I disagree with that. As someone who has helped plan coups d'etats, not here, but other places, it takes a lot of work, the former official went on. That's a quote from him. And that's not what Trump did. It was just stumbling around from one idea to another. When Tapper asked for specifics, Bolton refused to elaborate, but did go on to mention Venezuela, where U.S.-backed opposition figures attempted to overthrow President Nicolas Maduro in 2019, but failed to inspire mass defections from the security forces. See how evil this America's foreign policy is? And Americans either don't know and or play stupid when it comes to America's foreign policy. They know full and damn well their government is doing this. And they're responsible for it as well. Not just their politicians, but the American people too are responsible for it. The efforts in Venezuela turned out not to be successful, he added. Thankfully, you piece of garbage. You freaking human piece of garbage. He said, adding, not that, quote, not that we had all that much to do with it, but I saw what it took for an opposition to try and overturn an illegally elected president, and they failed. Then working as Trump's national security advisor, Bolton publicly supported opposition leader Juan Guaido during the coup attempt, even addressing social media posts to senior Venezuelan officials urging them to join the effort. In comments to reporters at the time, however, he argued this is clearly not a coup. And that's a direct quote from him. They lie like blatantly, like it's nothing. They carry out military coups in secret, privately, covertly, and then they argue and bark that they had nothing to do with it. Maintaining Guaido was Venezuela's legitimate leader. Who the fuck are you to determine or to say who is a legitimate leader in a country? You piece of garbage. We don't even have legitimate leaders here in the U.S. with all of the political corruption that's going on. While the CNN anchor pressed Bolton further on his coup comments, saying, quote, I feel like there's other stuff you're not telling me, he replied, I'm sure there is, and offered no other details. Bolton has served in top positions for several administrations since the 1980s. Ladies and gentlemen, this piece of garbage has been in U.S. government since the 1980s. And you have virus and diseases like this who are in government for decades. They're career politicians who have some of the most evil ideas and carry out these evil ideas on behalf of the U.S. government and on behalf of Americans. Bolton has served in top positions for several administrations since the 1980s, working as former President Ronald Reagan's Assistant Attorney General, a State Department official under former President George H.W. Bush, and later as UN Ambassador for former President George W. Bush. His tenure in the Trump administration was cut short due to disagreements with the Commander-in-Chief, ultimately resigning amid a heated public dispute with his former boss. Trump should have never hired him in the first place. Like I said, there's a million reasons to fault and blame Trump on. Firing this piece of garbage is not one of them. And my final thoughts on this is people like this are dangerous. They infect all facets of U.S. government and U.S. society. Unfortunately, Americans are either too lethargic and or they feign their powerlessness when it comes to pieces of garbage like this and ousting them from government. These pieces of garbage should not be fit to serve, should be nowhere near the U.S. government, and nowhere near positions of power. He's a neocon, a neoconservative, and a convict. He should be in prison, not free breathing our free air, let alone in government dictating what should happen to other foreign countries / nations. And this is why this channel is so important, because it highlights pieces of garbage like this, and it highlights articles like this that are very important for Americans' attention. Not too many Americans are aware of this, but they need to be. Absolute fucking piece of vile garbage. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, comment, hit the like button, If you're listening to this on the podcast, Anchor, whatever other podcast, tweet me. Let me know what you guys think. This infuriates me, man. America's foreign policy, absolute garbage.